Hello, ladies, and thank you for watching The Beauty Shaman. So today we are doing part 3 of a 3-part series with the fabulous Jules Pelaez, who with Joe Shaman wrote The Conscious Cleanse. Lose weight, heal your body, and transform your life in 14 days. So this is a fabulous book. It's a fabulous cleanse. I've interviewed Jules before, and today we are going to talk about, for the next 10-15 minutes, food combining and bloating. This is a huge topic. We all sit around and, talk. I mean, all my friends, we sit around and talk about, bloating. So how does food combining stop bloating? And let's kind of bring that into that.
Hi, Suzanne. Thanks for having me. I would say that gas and bloating are the reason I'm even in this seat today, because had it not been...
It's great to know about you. Every time I look at you, I think, ooh, gas and bloating. Yeah.
Gas and bloating. I mean, I was that person who would clear the family out of the room because my gas could be so deadly. And if you have really horrific gas, I would say the first thing that I'd want people to know is that it doesn't have to be that way, and it's not normal. I thought it was normal. I thought, oh, I got it from my dad. He has horrific gas and bloating and belching, and it goes back to what we were talking about before in one of our previous videos about gut health. But the key thing, one of the key things that really has helped me turn my health around is this idea of food combining.
Yes, go ahead. So let's talk about it, because I found this to be huge as well. And it feels weird when you first start doing it, but then after you get used to it, it actually makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about what is food combining.
A lot of people come to this idea of food combining and they are like, what are you talking about? Meat and potatoes, rice and beans, all these things are like, they've been around, they've been in our culture forever. The food pyramid is have a meat with the starch. And this really takes that sort of conventional, traditional wisdom and turns it on its head. And it can be confusing, but what we try to do in our program and what I'll try to do today is just to break it down into a simple way that people can understand.
Okay.
So food combining, basically why we want to do it is to optimize digestion. And optimizing digestion means that you're optimizing the breakdown of food, the assimilation, and the absorption of food. Because if you are eating really good food, but you're not absorbing it, then who cares? It's not doing anything. The other amazing thing about food combining is that it helps you to eliminate more efficiently. And elimination, which we've again talked about on one of our other videos, has to do with the waste that gets stored in our body. And we don't want to be storing waste in our body. We want that waste to go out of the body. So you can think waste and weight. Waste equals weight. When you properly combine your food, you optimize digestion, and then you eliminate better. And eliminating better means that you're not carrying around a bunch of food that you don't need, which is going to reduce the impact of toxins and certainly plays into a healthy gut as well as effortless, and I'll say effortless weight loss, because you're not counting calories, you're not pounding the pavement, trying to run, 3 miles a day and lift your weights and make sure you get your cardio in and make sure that you get to your yoga class. I mean, all that stuff can make our head spin. And so that's what I mean when we're trying really hard.
Yeah, I just got overwhelmed when you said all of that, because I've done all of that, right? Just trying so hard when really it's something super simple that you can do. And I think the food combining is that sort of simple thing. So go ahead, continue talking about that, because I think that's
Yeah. So the basis of a food combining plan would be, first and foremost, to think of veggies, specifically non-starchy veggies, as the main event. And the main event meaning 2/3 of your plate filled with veggies. So this could be a dark leafy green salad, like a fresh salad with romaine and spinach and kale and cabbage and radishes and your favorite dressing. I like to go simple with a little bit of olive oil and lemon juice. It could be a stir fry. It could be roasted veggies. In fact, putting all those things together is really delicious. You have your raw salad with your roasted veggies on top, but that's 2/3 of the event. So Non-starchy veggies then will combine with either a starch or a protein. And the starch in the conscious cleanse, we focus on the non-gluten grains. So things like quinoa, buckwheat, amaranth, millet, brown rice even is fine for a lot of people. So those are your non-gluten grains. Protein gets broken down into a couple different categories. There's your animal protein, which is your fish, your meats, your eggs, even not on the conscious cleanse, but your eggs, your animal protein will combine with veggies, but you wouldn't put a starch in there. So you do your non-gluten grains with your veggies or your animal protein with your veggies. And I mentioned that protein can break down in a couple different categories. We have vegetarian and vegans out there. Beans, we like to keep in their own category just for simplicity's sake. So if you're going to, do a big salad, you put your garbanzo beans on that salad, skip the chicken. So just have your beans, your legumes with your veggies.
Yeah.
And then we put nuts and seeds in its own category. So same idea. Within protein, we have the animal protein, we have the nuts and seeds, we have the beans and legumes. And each one of those can be treated as their own category underneath the protein. So each of those would combine with the veggies. And then the last piece are the starchy veggies. So your sweet potatoes, your butternut squash, your spaghetti, your acorn squash, those types of things will also combine with veggies. So don't have any animal protein when you're having your sweet potato, just have your sweet potato with your veggies. And something that's, like really, really delicious. This wouldn't be on the conscious cleanse, but it's something that is part of, our lifestyle program, is a spaghetti squash, with a ton of roasted veggies on top of like a homemade marinara sauce. So again, you can have, your roasted veggies with your starch if that's kind of what you're craving.
Right. Yeah, and that's, once you start doing this, I'd like to point out, once I started doing it, like initially it was sort of like, what about the rice? Because I like rice. But once I started doing it, it was just such a no-brainer. And I love the idea of doing like a salad and then roasted veggies on top. I love that. And it's super simple. And you eat and you're like, wow, I feel incredible. Like you don't have that same heaviness after you eat.
You don't. And that was one of those things that when I was a kid, I remember having a Thanksgiving dinner. I was probably 13 or 14, having, a traditional Thanksgiving dinner, getting off of my chair and somehow ending up under the table and falling asleep. And when I came to like 20 minutes later, I was like, what just happened? And why in the world would the food that we eat make us want to go to sleep? Like instinctively, I thought that was, there was something wrong with that picture. And that's sort of been a thread that I followed throughout my life and my career, in that after we eat, we shouldn't feel tired. We shouldn't feel drained. And I mentioned before in another video that 80% of our body's energy goes to digestion. When we eat in these good food combinations, we don't feel that lethargic feeling after we eat. We actually feel like we get energy from our food, which I think is a really important distinction.
Well, absolutely. And I'm big on mental clarity. I love to just have a mental sharpness. And I find if I eat a little less and I eat right and I eat exactly, kind of what we're talking about, man, I am sharp as a tack. And the minute I go kind of veer off, and periodically I veer off, and have my thing, and I think, God, why did I do that? I don't feel as sharp. I can't think clearly. So interesting that is such an important aspect to that.
Right, because all the blood is flowing from your brain to work on the energy of digestion, which is, breaking down the last meal that you had. One other piece about food combining, which is an important distinction for a lot of people, is to eat fruit alone or leave it alone. And that's my saying, eat fruit alone or leave it alone, because everything that the whole principle behind food combining, I get this question a lot, is like, why these combinations? Different foods require different times in the digestive tract. So animal protein is the most dense food that we can eat. right there with nuts and seeds, even oils for that matter, are very, very dense, and they're harder for the body to break down. So they require more time in the digestive system. By contrast, fruit is filled with water and sugar, and it's going to break down really, really quickly. So most fruit is 30 to 45 minutes. So the melons, the bananas, things like that take a little bit longer. But most fruit, your berries, that sort of thing, they're going to take 30 minutes in the digestive system. So I know that it's very popular to have fruit for dessert, right? Is like, oh, it's the healthy dessert. It's actually one of the worst things that you can do after having a heavy meal, because you eat your heavy meal. Let's just say it's salmon and veggies and rice or whatever it is. And then you have fruit on top of it. Well, the salmon, the rice, and the veggies are going to take probably closer to 3 hours to break down and digest. Whereas if you eat the fruit, if you eat the fruit on top of that, the fruit will actually start to break down on top of the previous meal, and it will cause fermentation. So all those sugars and all that breakdown of the fruit is trying to get through that heavier meal, and it causes the fermentation, which causes the gas and causes the bloating. And that's where we started, right?
Yeah, gas, bloating from
with the gas and the bloating. So if you eat something and you get bloating, you get gas, this is something to consider. Was it a food combination potentially that caused that? Or is it maybe just a food that actually doesn't agree with my system, which can be the case with, the allergens like dairy and sugar and even eggs and soy and gluten, things like that.
Right. And it's easy. I mean, sometimes I'll get up and just have a piece of fruit, leave it a little while, and then eat something much later. So I'm still getting a little bit of fruit, because there is obviously some great nutrients in fruit. And so that's,
it's true. Fruit has been getting a bad rap lately because of the sugar that's in fruit. A lot of people who don't have yeast and candida can tolerate fruit. I'm one of those people. It's a good snack to have while you're preparing your meal. So if you're making dinner, that's when you want to have your berries. That's when you want to cut up your apple or your pear. It's a great snack to have. Just wait 30 minutes while you're preparing your dinner, then you're fine when you sit down for dinner.
Right. Yeah, and that's easy. I mean, I like to do it in the morning, but other people, like you say, what I don't like is if I have a salad and they put strawberries in it. Then I'm like picking the strawberries out, because I think, oh God, my gas after this is going to be, speaking of gas, right? Like, it's just not good. So.
Right. Yeah. And different people can tolerate different things. There's, I mentioned that there were some nuances with food combining. Fruit will combine with dark leafy greens. As long as they're not heavy oils or they always put goat cheese on that salad. So it ruins the food combining rule. So you're better off leaving the strawberries out of it. But there, like I said, there are some caveats. If you just had dark leafy greens with strawberries, you'd probably be fine. But that's always the barometer is, start to tune into your own body, see if these are good combinations for you. And ultimately your body will be your guide.
Well, I think that's true. And I think that's the rule of thumb with all of this stuff, is really learning to pay attention to your body and listen to your body, and not just be acting on this compulsion that we have to overeat or to eat certain things. And that's one of the things I love about your cleanse is that it really puts you in touch with that.
Yeah, and too many food rules can drive anybody crazy, so just like one step at a time, even if it was just a simple awareness around having more veggies on your plate, that would be a good first step in learning to food combine. So, making sure that you start your meal with a raw salad is going to help you digest whatever the food is. You go out for Mexican food, start with a salad, so that when all that cheese and gluten and dairy come in and all that, the meat comes in, your body's a little bit more equipped to handle it.
Right. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for talking about all this, Jules, with bloating and gas.
No fun.
No fun, but funny.
Yes.
So thank you so much for joining me on The Beauty Shaman. And thank you so much, ladies, for watching. Again, this is a 3-part series with Jules from The Conscious Cleanse. And I will also do a 3-part series with her counterpart, Joe Shaman. So thank you so much for watching. And I hope you have learned a lot. Please feel free to comment in the section below. We'd love to hear from you.